Hi everybody. So this is going to be a continuation of the unit on how to make a slab and stuff that you can do with slabs. So I've gone out and gone for a walk in Arlington, and I found some really big leaves. Last time I was working with maple leaves, which are a little bit smaller. If you keep your leaves inside of a Ziploc bag, these have been inside the Ziploc bag for almost a week now, and they're still fresh and green. Some of them have started to turn, but for the most part, a Ziploc bag keeps them green in a way that like sticking them in water just doesn't work for some reason. Anyway, I found these really big leaves, which I could use to make really cool, see the size of my hand, it's very big, little dishes if I wanted to. I'm gonna take the smallest one here, which is still pretty big. And I'm gonna use the veiny side of that as opposed to the smooth side to press into a clay slab and create a trinket dish in that way. So I'm gonna start off with my clay, and I'm gonna get my cutting line, and I'm going to just run a thin cut. Okay, and I've got a piece which is about the thickness of my finger. And I'm gonna put that on my piece of fabric that I'm using. And I'm gonna fold over, leaving a little bit of space on the side so you can see. I'm gonna leave a little bit of space on the side for it to expand. Okay, so there's my space, and this is everything. Okay, once again, this is a home studio, so I don't have my fancy rolling pin that I would usually use, and I'm using this bottle. You can use anything that can roll stuff. So I'm just gonna roll it, and my goal is to get to something that's about 1/4 of an inch thick and which will accommodate the whole size of the leaf that I am using. So I'm just rolling it out. If you go side to side, it gets wider. If you go front to back, it gets longer. Okay, so I'm checking on that. You can see that it's not quite even. It kind of has some ripples in terms of how deep that I've gone. What I can go ahead and do is flip it over, including all of the fabric, and roll from the other side a little bit as well. Try to create a nice consistent motion to get that consistency that we're going for. Because if it's lumpy, your dish will look lumpy. Okay, now I'm gonna peel back my fabric. All right, this is looking quite a bit better to me. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in with my rib tool, and I didn't clean mine before it dried, so I've got stuff on it, which I don't want. I want a clean rib tool. Okay, I could use this one, or I could use the flat side of this one, or I could use an old gift card or credit card. So I'm gonna take the flat side, and I'm gonna smooth it out. Okay, so that's nice and smooth now. I'm gonna flip it over. All right, and then I'm gonna smooth out this side as well. This is the side that I'm gonna use to press my leaf on. So it's gonna be really important that this side especially not have any of the texture of your shirt. So if you look at this closely, you can tell that there's a texture difference between the area that I've smoothed and the area that has the texture of the shirt. If I didn't smooth it, when I press my leaf in, it's going to look like shirt plus leaf instead of just leaf. It's gonna look kind of distracting, it's not gonna look entirely like the leaf. So make sure that you smooth it out really nice. All right, and that's looking good. Now, I don't want to add any water to this. I don't want to be sponging it or anything like that because that's going to make it too sticky and create a mess. So once again, I've got my leaf. And did I make this big enough for the other leaf? Ooh, I did. But which leaf do I like the best? I like this one because it has kind of like a heart shape at the bottom. So I can use this one. So I'm going to take the veiny side of my leaf, not the smooth side, which has no veins. Okay, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to press it directly onto the clay. So I've placed it, I've got it so that all the edges are covered. Start in the middle and press to the outside to push it into the clay. The reason you want to start on the middle is so you don't get any spots where there's like an air pocket out of nowhere or something overlapping. Okay, so I've just pressed that really nicely. If you want to, you can use your roller again and really roll it into the clay. And that's getting a pretty nice effect for my leaf. Your leaf might be too delicate for this. Okay, so that's nice and pressed in. It's got like a nice leafy smell now. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and lift that out slowly. Okay, and you can see I've got this nice beautiful leaf texture on there now. Okay, and what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm going to have been smart and have already put this on something to make my life easier, but I didn't. Okay, so if you have a board or a cutting board or anything that you could place it on there before you cut it out. Otherwise, you're gonna end up messing up your edges. Okay, and then you're gonna take a cutting tool. You could use the needle tool, or you could use any other cutting tool. I'm gonna choose my cutting tool because I like this one. And I'm gonna come around the edges and I'm going to cut it at an angle. This part's important. So when the cutting tool meets it, I don't wanna be cutting straight on. I wanna be cutting at an angle so that it has a curve that comes underneath it. If you cut it straight on, you're gonna end up fixing it later. So I'm angling my tool somewhat to the outside, trying to remain the same in the way that I approach all of my edges, because if it, see how I'm using my hand I'm tilting the plate that it's on to be able to neatly come around the edge. So I'm gonna pick up right where I left off here. I'm choosing not to include the stem as part of my dish because I've tried that in the past and it ended up being a little too fragile after all was said and done. Once it was fired, it was still just really fragile. I didn't like having a fragile part on a dish. All right, and I've gone ahead and I've come all the way around. Now I can take off my excess, and this is still really good usable clay. So what am I gonna do with it? I'm gonna smack it together, and I'm gonna give it a little wedge. Okay, so I just want that to be worked back together with no air pockets. Okay, picking up all the clay that I've left on my counter with my tool here. Okay, and I'm gonna stick that back in my box. All right, so then I've got this guy. Now, this is at the wet stage. Ideally, I'd have the edges curve up a bit so that it could hold something in between. If I wanted it to be completely flat, I would simply let it dry like this. but I'm gonna want to turn up the edges. So here's another example from the other day that I was working on, and it's gotten to the leather hard stage. And I've gone ahead and just gently turned up my corner edges. You can see how firm it is. I can hold it on one side and it's not gonna flop down at all because it's leather hard. It's on the firm end of leather hard right now. Okay, so I've already before this curved up my edges, and what I can do now is finish it. You can see that the edges are really sharp. Some of them have rough spots, like this corner, there's a rough spot here. And what I can do is I can take my little sponge and some water. Okay, so I've got my sponge and it's a little bit of wet, and I can just run it over these edges with gentle, smooth strokes and take care of any roughness and give it a really polished look. And I'll be doing the same thing to my larger leaf a little bit later on. So I've smoothed out these edges. Okay, this would be a good time to check your plate for anything on the surface that you don't like and that you want to fix. You don't want to press too hard with the sponge, but if you have any little stuff stuck on like this would be a great moment to do that, but you don't want to do what I just did and like start to kind of smush out your design. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that as is. From here, another consideration that there is whether I might want my piece to stand up a little bit. And to do that, I could choose to roll another slab. So what I do then, I'd roll out my little baby slab. It's not quite even. I can feel it. There's a lump. Okay, so I'd roll out a little piece of slab. And then what I could do is use something with a straight edge to guide me. So I could just take this tool, this rib tool, and I could simply get in there, and I want to take it off of my cloth because I don't want to end up cutting my cloth. Okay, so I'd take that little piece of clay that I just rolled out and I could just chop, or I could use it as a guide if I felt too nervous to just chop. But I actually kind of like the chopping. So I'm going to chop and chop, and I'm going to cut this into 4 pieces that I'm trying to make the same. So I've cut my first one. I'm actually going to do this with them on top of each other now to make sure they're actually exactly the same. Okay, so you can see I've got piece 1 and piece 2 here. And I've cut them out. Now, would it be smart to do this with a ruler? Absolutely, if you want them to be the same size. I'm just doing a quick rough up. So I've got my 4 feet. I would wait for these to get leather hard. And then what I could do is make this into a sushi dish by slipping and scoring them on. That's a little taller than I think I might like to ultimately have it be. So I might cut those down smaller, but I will do that in the next segment. So I'll wait for those to dry, wait for my leaf to dry, and from here it's just a waiting game. And once again, the time that it takes to get clay to the leather hard stage is completely dependent on the humidity in your house and the temperature in your house, and how wet your clay was to begin with. Like if you had just reclaimed it, it might be wetter. If you just pulled it fresh from the bag and it had been sitting for a year, it's gonna be drier. So I'm gonna wait for everything to dry up a bit. I'm going to put my piece that's already leather hard back inside wet storage container, because if I don't do that, it will be too dry by the time the other clay is leather hard. If this becomes bone dry or close to bone dry, if I try to attach something to it, it will not work. It simply will not. You can lie to yourself and try to make the attachment, and it might look like it's attached, but then when you fire it, it'll fall right off. So if that does happen to you, start again. Just start again. It's okay. It didn't take that long. Just start again. Yep. All right, stay tuned for the next part.